Over the last few weeks, there's been tons of changes to every class, and one that's pretty much been untouched up until now has really been tanks. There's not been massive, meaningful changes to tanks, but I do think this guy is going to probably disagree with that statement. So I might as well introduce Subtle straight away. Hi, Subtle.
Hey, glad to be here. Glad to be talking tanks, especially MoP tanks, and glad we finally got some changes after, Kata, we were promised some changes, and that never really happened.
That's been quite a hot talking point, has been the fact that Kata, we got nothing, and Mr. Pandaria is not even launched yet, and we've had more in a beta in terms of changes than we had throughout an entire expansion's life cycle, which is it's pretty impressive. But we'll get onto that in just a second. But if any of you haven't seen the video that should have gone out before this one, hopefully, with Double Zug around healers, we're going to be following exactly the same format. So we want to touch on the big changes to tanks. This guy knows far, far more than I will ever know about tanks, so it's better to hear it from him than to hear it from me. We're going to touch on if any of the tanks need more or they haven't had enough. Guardian Druid would be one that I would raise straight away there. How do you feel about Guardian Druids?
To me, they don't really even exist. They're not, real tanks. To me, there's only 4 tanks in the game: Brewmaster, Pally, Prot Warrior, and Blood DK. In all seriousness, though, Guardian Druid, I haven't played it a ton, but it does seem like it could use a little bit more probably right now. I know later on it will be better, but some of the stuff they've been doing with these changes is just making things better early, even if they are going to be good later too. I think we could see some more for Guardian for sure.
Yeah, I do hope so, because I think that they're kind of getting the short end of the stick at the moment. But then the last thing we're going to touch on, and we are going to try and keep this as short as possible, but we'll see how we fare there, is what will be the meta in 10 and 25. Now, this is going to be a very opinionated section, because what Subtle thinks and what I think could be two completely different things. So we might butt heads a little bit over tank compositions in raids. And then we're also going to talk about the most fun tanks to play. So this is more for the person that's just coming back to Mr. Pandaria. Maybe they quit during Wrath of the Lich King, and they're coming back because MoP was their favourite expansion. What tank would be a fun one to play? That would be from the perspective of not being a meta chaser and being like, Blood DK is the best, I have to play Blood DK. And then finally, a little bit about what is the easiest tank to play as well, which also would kind of suit that new person or someone returning to the game after a break, because some of these tanks are far more complicated than others, especially if you want to get the most out of them. So first up, and it probably is the class that Subtle's most associated with, but that could shift soon, which we will definitely talk to him about soon, the Blood DK. So what are your thoughts around the Blood DK changes, and what are they, firstly? What do people need to know about how they've changed since the beta went live?
I mean, Blood DK, most people probably already know, is kind of considered like the top tank right now. The gap's definitely a lot smaller than it was in other expansions like Kata, where, Blood DK was just leagues ahead of the next tank. The gap's a lot smaller, but Blood DK is probably the overall number one tank. Most people would agree. But as far as changes, the first one they got was actually an Outbreak cooldown reduction. This one wasn't like a huge deal. It was more kind of a quality of life kind of deal. Through glyphing, they can even make it have no cooldown and just cause runic power. But 30-second cooldown on Outbreak, reduced from 60. So that was just kind of nice quality of life. More for kind of dungeons and stuff. They also just got hit with a ton of changes. I believe it was just yesterday, actually. So Raised Dead no longer benefits from Vengeance, and Army of the Dead no longer benefits from Vengeance. So the first one, this Raised Dead one, this one is a little puzzling, to say the least, because it was already a pretty small percentage of their overall damage. And the estimations right now are that it's actually going to be a DPS loss to press Raised Dead now with this change, which feels pretty bad, because the only thing you'll lose damage, you will be able to death pact it, so that is the one thing you do gain from it, but it feels weird to have a cooldown like that just like actually be a DPS loss for you. That is one I would like to see them maybe revisit. The Army of the Dead one, that one was pretty crazy at Vengeance. I think that nerf is probably okay. Some people are a little upset about this one just because it kind of reduces the skill cap of Blood DK. You're not going to think about when you press Army anymore. You're just going to do it on pull, like you did all of Kata. Yeah, so a few more changes too. Blood presence, damage reduction increased from 12% or to 12% from 10%. Uh, Really minor change. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure why they even put that in, to be honest. But I mean, Bloody Kiss will take it. Any extra damage reduction is, always good as a tank, especially in this expansion where sometimes a lot of the time we're going out of our way to take more damage.
It's nice, like you say, any tank is not going to say no to 2% more damage reduction, but they must, in their data, they must be seeing that blood DKs are just taking significantly more damage than other tanks. Like, I can't really think of another reason for it, but like that's always kind of been the DK way, isn't it? Historically, your health bar should be like a yo-yo. You're taking loads of damage, but you're healing it back up and doing loads of damage at the same time. Like, so yeah, thought it was a weird one, but again, yeah, no DK is going to say no to it.
With DK already being kind of, most people's top choice for your tank, it is a little bit weird to, give it some extra damage reduction. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's a pretty small amount, and who's going to say no to that? Dancing Rune Weapon, though, this was a pretty significant bug fix, actually. It was doing 50% reduced damage. I believe it was only for strike attacks, not spells. So, like, Death Siphon wasn't being affected by this, for example. And so this is going to be a decent gain. Riani was actually saying, I believe, that he believed Army of the Dead nerf and this bug fix would actually kind of offset each other. So the end result wouldn't really be much damage difference there. Dancing Rune Weapon was using the incorrect Rune Strike. This apparently is negligible. And Glyph of Dancing Rune Weapon now correctly reduces Dancing Rune Weapon's damage, but nobody was using this anyway, so this is irrelevant. And Rune Strike will no longer have an erroneous 10% attack power ratio. So this one's actually pretty big. And at certain vengeance levels, it'll actually make you use Death Coil, which is something a lot of people are pretty upset about, that Blood DK is now going to have two different runic power spenders that they have to kind of manage, like at what vengeance level they're at and like when they should use each one. Most people just want to have one. It's like, I always press Rune Strike or I always press Death Coil kind of thing.
Yeah, which is how the class was kind of designed, you would have thought, wouldn't you? Death Coil is for Unholy, and Frost Strike is for Frost, and Rune Strike is for Blood.
Yeah, and like, I mean, Blood like has always occasionally used Death Coil, a range threat ability essentially, that kind of thing. But as part of your just spam rotation, it feels a bit odd. Something they could do to, make Rune Strike the primary thing you're using is literally just make Death Coil do less damage. So
is it just put it back to Kata, more? Is it like, are we talking like top level DKs will be using Rune Strike and Death Coil, or is it like, well, everyone should be doing it because it's that big of a difference?
I'm not fully sure how big of a difference, but I believe Rihanna was saying it's going to be like a small difference. You could like just Rune Strike always and be okay, but if you do want to squeak out that extra damage, then you would want to like min-max it. And it'll just depend, on your vengeance level, like when it makes sense to do that. So one of the arguments too was that you really need like a weak aura to like min-max that, and it just kind of feels bad if like a basic part of like, do you cast this or that is, basically just you have to have a weak aura that tells you whether or not you're doing that.
Yeah.
So I don't personally care too much about that part of it, just because, I mean, anybody who's playing optimally is using weak auras anyway. Just like having a weak aura that, pops up a Death Coil icon when you should Death Coil, a Rune Strike icon when you should Rune Strike. I don't know. To me, it's not that big of a deal, but I think it is a little goofy, like having to swap between the two of them, like sporadically in a fight,
Does the runic power cost not like end up equaling out as well? Because Death Coil costs more, right? I don't know the exact numbers.
Yeah, Death Coil costs more. So yeah, that is another factor in it too. So it's kind of combination of like how high your vengeance is and how high your runic power generation is. So in like certain situations, you can AMS and just get like infinite runic power for a little bit. So those situations, Death Coil bumps way up in value when like the runic power cost isn't a factor at all. So it's like a balancing act between those two things. So yeah, it's vengeance slash runic power generation essentially. Overall, I guess take on it is some of them are kind of weird, and I think the simplest thing is you just make Death Coil do less damage, so it's never the right thing to press. Because I don't think Bloody K needs their Rune Strike buffed again. Like it's already so good, the class. So I think you literally just nerf Death Coil, make it not worth pressing over Rune Strike, and that's probably the way to go.
And how do you feel about DK in general? Like with the change, again, the changes are fairly minor. None of them that are, other than the whole Rune Strike and Death Coil thing. There's nothing really game breaking. Where it's like, oh, this has changed completely how I need to play DK, or this has changed its viability or anything like that. Like the changes seem quite small. So do you still feel the same way about Blood DK now after the changes as you did going into MoP?
Single target damage is definitely going to be lower, and kind of the way we've been valuing a lot of the tanks, because most of the tanks, their survivability is fine. We'll get into some of the outliers there later, but most of their survivability is adequate for all this content. It's just a lot of people are valuing like how much damage does the tank do on like which tank you're bringing in, especially in 10-man when that's a lot more relevant too. So Blood DK being like the highest single target damage tank, that's the bar that everybody else is comparing themselves to. So the fact that Blood DK is now a little bit weaker, it just lowers the bar and brings other tanks closer to that level. So I mean, it probably still is the top overall tank, I would say. But we talked earlier, the gap's already a lot smaller in this expansion. The gap's even smaller now. So I pretty firmly believe you can just kind of play whatever you like the most, unless you're playing at the absolute like highest level.
Yeah, and it's quite funny because in one of the first MoP podcasts we done, when we were talking about tanks, you even said then, like, when we were talking about what's going to be the best, and you was like, well, even if going from private servers to actual classic, even if one of the tanks is just 5% different either way, that changes the landscape for all of them in terms of what's going to be stronger. I mean, we never dreamt in a million years Blizzard were going to actually actively make big changes to all the classes.
Never imagined. I mean, some of these look like retail patch notes, like how long they are with all the class changes. Like after Kata especially, I never dreamed, we would have class balance changes like this.
Well, while we're on that, so before we move on to the next tank, how do you feel in general about everything MoP so far? Like, you've already said that it surprised you, but like in a good way, a bad way, like how's it shaping up?
Yeah, I'm super hyped. I was already very excited about MoP, and seeing all these changes, honestly, it makes me even more excited that they're gonna, tweak some things. Because I mean, some of our early raids, we were bringing, like 8 survival hunters and stuff like that. So it's cool to see, all these other classes getting buffed, and like some people I played with in the past, like they're, for example, Holy Pally only players and stuff like that. And they were just told, like your class is going to be complete shit this expansion. So like, don't even play, So it's cool that like they're going to bring things up to, be viable. And I think it's just better for the game if, people get to play what they actually like versus, kind of being forced into a meta pick.
Yeah, I agree 100%. As I say, every time those class changes go out, I get a little bit excited because I feel like I'm playing MoP for the first time again. This is not new to anybody that plays retail. This is not new to anyone who even played Season of Discovery, to be fair. And it's a great feeling. But in my opinion, if you get some patch notes that go out and you see that your class just got 5% extra damage on something, or they've made a change, like that's really good. Okay, some people get negatively affected by them, but that's the nature of the beast. If you've been negatively affected, it's because your class is overperforming. It's as simple as that. No, Blizzard never nerf a class that doesn't need nerfing in most cases. So yeah, I'm with you. Like I really like everything they're doing. Who knew though? I think it's amazing. All the Cataclysm podcasts we done together, over the last couple of years. Who knew all they had to do was stop working on Season of Discovery, and Cataclysm would have been great.
Yeah, right. I mean, I was kind of saying it throughout Cata too, that they were just so focused on SOD, like they weren't really giving us much attention. And I mean, they got those creative juices flowing, working on SOD, making new raids and stuff. And it seems like they just had a lot of energy they felt like they needed to, put somewhere. And we're benefiting, tremendously from that. And all that energy is going towards MoP and making it a much fresher experience.
Okay, next tank. So take it away.
Yeah, so we'll talk about Prot Warrior next. That's near and dear to my heart. It's probably what I'm going to be maining at the beginning of the expansion. So, I mean, they haven't gotten too many changes, but honestly, I've felt awesome on Prot Warrior. I feel like it is an incredible tank already. So even just getting a couple changes felt like, Christmas. Felt like I was opening up presents when I was reading these changes. So shield barrier attack power modifier increased to 2 from 1.8. So what that means is every attack power you have, it's going to increase the absorb on your shield barrier by 2 instead of 1.8. So when you have, hundreds of thousands of attack power from Vengeance, just times that by 2. That's how much you're going to be shielding yourself for. On a fight like Empress Shakespeare, where you're probably going to be tanking all 6 of the little ads, you take a ridiculous amount of damage, but in turn, you get crazy Vengeance, which gives you crazy shield barriers. So on this fight, the highest shield barriers I saw were 1.6 million, which is just insane for a 1.5 second cooldown. Getting 3 extra health bars on a 1.5 second cooldown.
Yeah, but that's ridiculous.
On the flip side, though, the quickest death, on one of the times somebody missed a cooldown on me, my quickest death I saw was I was full HP and I had a 1 million absorb on me and I died in 0.5 seconds. So that's the kind of damage you're dealing with. Like you can literally take 3 health bars worth of damage in 0.5 seconds if a cooldown gets missed there. But shield barrier has been awesome. Absolutely love it. Prot Warrior is just super fun in general, but there's nothing like getting multiple health bars from a 1.5 second cooldown.
See, I thought you would get more excited by the damage because you're having to spend that rage on something that doesn't do damage. I thought you'd have been the sort of person that would have wanted to have. Oh,
you still do plenty of damage because you're spamming revenge. It's hitting multiple targets. You got max attack power 500, whatever 1,000, depending on your HP, and you're doing plenty of damage for sure. Number 1 damage on that fight by a lot.
Oh,
I think
nice.
probably 2x second highest. Yeah, this is pretty good. The other change, Shattering Throw. So, I mean, this is awesome. Shattering Throw inside of PvE instance content now instant cast and does not reset swing timer. So this is something we actually got from a glyph back in Wrath. They added a special glyph for this. And it's nice to just see this in because it always felt kind of bad that you had to, give something up to be able to use your Shattering Throw.
And not in the form of a glyph, which is lovely as well.
Not even a glyph. Yeah, I would have been upset if this was a minor glyph and I had to give up my burning charge or whatever, the fiery trail behind my charge. I would have been pissed. So I'm glad. Glad.
Yeah, the relief. Yeah, because you'd have never used it, would you? You'd have never used this glyph.
I would have never. If I had to give up my fire trail with charge, no chance. Never would have used it. There is another thing that's kind of on the horizon. There is a bug fix probably coming to Prot Warrior that maybe not a lot of people know about. So currently, every time you dodge or parry an attack as a Prot Warrior, you're getting 1 rage. And this is something that's not supposed to be there. It's just a bug. But it also makes Prot Warrior play a lot better, having, more rage generation. Because this is an expansion where you don't get very much rage. You're pretty rage starved, and you have to really kind of save up your rage in a lot of situations to be able to do the things you need to do. So I would really like, when they do fix this, I would really like to see something that kind of gives us a little rage back, because the rage already felt a little rough with this bug in, and without this bug, it's gonna be tough. So,
Oh, that's interesting. So does that mean if you're like, let's say Shakespeare, for example, your favorite fight, clearly,
mhm,
when you're
yeah,
tanking all those ads, are you getting that one rage for every individual
yes,
dodge? Oh, okay.
yes. So, oh man, I added up all my dodges and parries I got during, that basically minute long period where you're tanking all those ads. I believe it was around 80 to 100 rage I got during that time. And I had, I believe, about 800 total rage from my other sources. So 900 total, but 100 of it coming from this bug.
So
So,
it's not
I mean,
incredibly overpowered. Yeah, it's
yeah,
nice.
yeah, it's not insanely overpowered, but it is, you know, it's gonna feel bad when it goes away, because like the rage already is a little bit rough, and then like losing rage on top of that, it's gonna be kind of annoying. So I would really hope that Blizzard would add some kind of extra rage generation for Prot Warrior. My proposal would just be turn the defensive stance one rage every 5 seconds into five rage every, or sorry, one rage every 3 seconds into five rage every 3 seconds.
Hmm.
Um, that would make up for, the dodge parry bug being fixed. It would also give you more consistent rage gen on single target. Uh, you do have more rage gen on AoE just from, revenge game reset, being able to press that more. So I would just like to see a rage change that actually affects your single target a bit more too. So, and like one rage every 3 seconds is such a like goofy,
It's a
you
minuscule
know,
amount, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, it's a weird one.
You're
So
not exactly
I
planning
would,
around that, are you? You're not going, oh, I've got that one
yeah.
rage coming in 2 seconds. Oh,
Oh
wait.
man, I'm at 59 rage. I can't shield block it. I need that one.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, no. So I would just like it to, be increased to some meaningful amount. I would say five rage every 3 seconds. I think that's fair, given that they would fix this like dodge parry bug as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's honestly the only change I really would look for in a Prot Warrior. I feel like they're pretty strong all around. The only thing that feels bad about them at all is just insufficient rage generation. So anything to address that, and I think Prot Warrior is golden.
So overall, like you obviously mentioned that you are going Prot Warrior main over DK and over Brewmaster, because I know when you was playing on Stormforge, you was absolutely loving Brewmaster, like probably the most fun I've ever seen you have. And then to go
Yeah,
Warrior has honestly shocked me. I really, if you was going to change away from DK, I was fully expecting it to be Brewmaster.
yeah. So I mean, we'll get into the brew stuff next, because there are some reasons why brew became less appealing versus private server for me. Uh, Prot Warrior has always been one of my favorite tanks, though. I just think like charging around, heroic leaping, like all that kind of stuff, having lots of like short cooldowns you get to press all the time, all that kind of stuff is super appealing to me. I've always been a huge Prot Warrior fan. I'm one of the few people who actually played a Prot Warrior start to finish in Wrath. When people were like memeing on Prot Warrior, I maintained every single thing in Wrath on a Prot Warrior. Prot Warrior has been one of my favorite tanks forever.
Its
Um,
toolkit is insane in Mr.
it's
Pandaria
so
as
good.
well. Like, absolutely
Yeah,
insane.
like historically they've had a fun toolkit, and I mean MoP just piles even more things on it. It's MoP. Some people might call it bloat. I just think is fun as hell, like having a million different things to press. And yeah, I'm a huge fan of Pro Warrior though.
Good. Okay, so let's go to my favourite tank. Go on, Brewmaster.
All right, Brewmaster. So the big change they got here was blackout kick damage increase by 25%.
I was going to say that's the only one I know.
There is actually one more. It's a bug fix, not a
Oh, okay.
not a new buff or anything like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, blackout kick damage increase. I had this at around 2.5 to 4k DPS increase for brew, so pretty solid. Single target damage outside of Big Tony the Tigers, where it was a little bit lacking. So getting a little bit more blackout kick damage, solid buff addresses what I would say is one of their weaker points, although I do have some stuff I'm going to bring up in a second here that I think is the biggest thing that needs addressing for Brewmaster. But the bug fix that they had was that a variety of different things were actually resetting the brew swing timer. So things like proccing Gift of the Ox, dealing Breath of Fire damage, dealing Breath of Fire periodic damage, like tons of different things Brewmasters do, was actually resetting their swing timer. And not only does that reduce your damage because you're losing auto attacks, but you probably know this, Scotty. Very important mechanic, Elusive Brew, is based on critting with your auto attacks.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not auto attacking, you're not proccing Elusive Brew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So basically, fixing this bug, it put Elusive Brew generation like through the roof. It's a lot better. Increased damage a bit. You're doing more auto attack damage now. So that was pretty significant. So the big reason why I kind of switched over to Pro Warrior from Brew versus what I experienced on private servers. So Gift of the Ox, which spawns the healing spheres on the ground for anybody who doesn't know, pretty core part of Brewmaster. You get a lot of your healing from that. On live, it has 50% reduced healing compared to P server. Also, the grouping of the orbs is a lot worse on live than on P server. On P server, it, very consistently, it spawns the orbs very close to you. They're very easy to pick up. You can't just strafe back and forth. It's not a big deal. You pick them up very easily. On live, when you're strafing, they're just spawning all over the place. It feels like possibly the hitbox on them is smaller than on P server too. So it's actually just harder to pick them up even if you are the same distance from them. So the big changes I would like to see for Brew are increased Gift of the Ox healing. It doesn't necessarily have to be doubled to, become what it is on P server, but I would like to see it increase quite a bit, at least 50% increase from where it is right now. And then the other big thing would just be make it easier to pick up the spheres. So make them spawn in a tighter grouping and or increase the pickup radius on them too. I would say for sure do both of those. One other idea I had just to float out there was that rushing Jadewind would actually pick up your healing spheres for you too. So kind of anything. Yeah, anything it's just a tornado that pulls in your healing spheres. And that would obviously just follow the same rules, so it wouldn't pick them up if you're full health kind of deal. And honestly, Brew feels really good. It's just, man, coming from P server where that self-sustain felt so awesome, coming over to beta where those healing spheres are not nearly what they are on P server, that's the main thing I would like to see change, because that's really the thing that's kind of limiting my enjoyment of Brew right now. I do still really, really like it. It's just I've experienced what it could be, and playing this version just kind of feels bad after, you've been to the promised land, you've seen what this Gift of the Ox could look like. So I would love to see those changes.
I was smiling the whole time you started talking, and that was purely because I knew what you was going to say before you said it. Because it was exactly my own frustrations as well. Like, we've both played Brewmaster on the same server, so we're both going to see the same thing. And I'll be honest with you, I've got more issues with Gift of the Ox than just that. I have issues where I can see it and I'm having to move to it to pick it. Let's say there's a few there. Mm-hmm. And I'll run through them, literally run through them. Let's say the boss has been taunted and I've not even got it. I can run through them and it still won't give me the hill. It won't pick the orbs up. And I'm like on top of them. Like the radius is awkward. And the whole, they don't group properly. I've literally seen them spawn behind the boss. I've done a very slight movement and they've spawned like I physically can't get to them. They're that far away.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's really really strange. I'll be honest with you. I was a much bigger fan of them when they was bugged and they was huge. Do you remember, like right in the first
Yeah.
week?
Yeah.
No, I much preferred that. At least it was as if they reduced the size, and the size, when they reduced the size, also reduced the radius of what you can pick them up by. Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean? Because when they were
Yeah.
big, they actually seemed to function fine in terms of picking them up, but they didn't function fine
Hmm.
still in terms of spawning, or that was my experience. But I'm with you 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I only played it a little bit before they fixed it, but yeah, it did seem like they were a bit easier to pick up. But man, if they could just like fix this one thing, oh god, Brew would feel so good again. Because I mean, it's just missing kind of a core part of its gameplay right now. Is like you don't really have that super reliable self sustain that you could have, and yeah, I mean, I would love to see that change because I'm a huge Brew fan. Protware and Brewmaster, Prop Ally, all my jam. But
Yeah, the
uh,
self healing's really suffered on Brewmaster because of it. To be fair, like you're used to, on certain fights, you're used to seeing yourself really pushing for number one healer.
mm,
And that's impossible. Like, yeah, I've noticed, I've looked several times after fights and expected my healing to be really high. And then I'm looking at it like, how is it physically that low? And you look at the Gift of the Ox healing, and yeah, it's pretty pitiful. Like, yeah, I
yeah,
agree with you. It's definitely, the whole thing around Brewmaster is being able to do those big heals, because yeah, you haven't unfortunately got a 1.5 second cooldown, 1.5 million absorb. Like, you need the heal.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's another crazy thing. Like, guard felt so good before I started playing Protware, and then I played Protware, and it's like, oh, this guard with a 1.5 second cooldown instead of a 30 second cooldown.
Yeah, that is
It-
that is absolutely crazy. Yeah, when you said earlier how much it absorbed, and I'm thinking I don't even see him that big with guard. Like, and you've got yeah, a 1.5 second cooldown.
yeah, no, is super fun. I love where Protware is at. Just needs a little more rage gen, and yeah. I think a lot of these tanks are honestly just like one or two changes away from being super competitive and being able to at least tie Blood Decay, for that top spot kind of.
Yeah. Well, I'm really intrigued to hear not only the changes, because the changes have been minimal, but just your opinion in general on Prop Pally. So if we can go Prop Pally next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So for Prop Ally, I mean, the changes they got, just 5% extra damage reduction on Sanctuary. That's just one of your passive abilities. It was 15% damage reduction. Now it's 20. So we talked about before, tanks will always take damage reduction, anytime they can get it. I think part of the thinking on this was just that Shield of the Righteous, which gives you, depending on your mastery, about 40+% physical DR. Since the uptime on that's lower in phase one, I think this is something they added to kind of compensate for that. And then Sacred Shield, they made it even better, 43% better. This is also like pretty significant phase one change because you just don't have a lot of holy power to be spending on Eternal Flame at this point. So buffing Sacred Shield, which doesn't cost any holy power, it lets you kind of maximize your Shield of the Righteous uptime while you still have benefit from that talent. So solid changes overall. I think it definitely helps Prop Ally. But I personally feel like the change you gotta make is super simple. And that's just give Prop Ally a passive haste buff. That's it. Because we know Prop Ally gets great later when, like Throne Thunder, when it can get that 50% haste at once. So to me, the obvious solution is you just give them a passive haste buff right now that would go away later when they would scale better. And either it's, it could be like a 15% haste buff, or it could be like they get 35% more haste rating. Either of those two things would let them get to 50% haste in phase one BIS. Blizzard could like tweak those numbers depending on if they want people to be able to get to 50% haste before full BIS or not. So that's up to them, but I mean, it's all up to them. But
so what does that do for people who not in the know when it comes to prop pally? What's magical about that 50% haste?
Yeah, so at 50% haste, basically you have this new passive called Sanctity of Battle, and haste reduces the cooldown of all of your abilities, basically all your rotational abilities, and haste also reduces your global cooldown. So when you get to 50% haste, you have a 1 second global cooldown. It can't go below that, so your cap's there. You have your 1 second GCD, and all of your abilities have really short cooldowns now. So you're able to generate a ton of holy power. You can do a lot more damage because you can use your rotational abilities more often. And it just kind of unlocks the class. Like when you reach that point, you can keep Shield of the Righteous up 100% of the time if you want to. And with things like Holy Avenger too, you can, really like stockpile some Shield of the Righteous time and also get Eternal Flames out, stuff like that. So haste is just incredibly important. It's probably a more important stat for prop high than any stat is for any other class. It's just so important. And normally I wouldn't really advocate for this kind of like huge buff for a class that will get really good later. But given, Blizzard's approach to this and other classes that are not as good phase one but get amazing later, like Affliction Lock, are getting buffed, and with Blizzard's intent that those buffs will get rolled back later when they're naturally good anyway. So given that, I think Prop Ally is a perfect candidate for one of these buffs that, brings them online early, and then you just take that away later when they're naturally going to be good anyway.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, my sort of when people say, "Oh, I want to play prop pally, but I don't want to wait till Throne of Thunder, Siege of Orgrimmar, I want to play it in phase one." I kind of say the same thing. I sound like a broken record. Like I truly believe that prop pally is absolutely fine in phase one. I mean, bear with me before you shout at me. Like they're absolutely fine as a tank. Like to tank the content, they can tank the content. Like absolutely fine, but that was where they got buffed, as in the class changes, they got more damage reduction, which is like cool. Like we said earlier with DKs, yeah, any damage reduction, a tank's always going to take it. But that was kind of not what the issue is with prop pally. Like, not only does that haste, enable you to survive more because you can keep, better uptime on Shield of Righteous, but it enables you to do more damage. Ultimately, that is the thing for me personally that really makes me struggle taking a prop pally in the first phase, because it's like I want one because their toolkit is amazing. Utility wise, being able to have one of your tanks bring in, double bops and double hand of sacks for your other tank, and or even just other mechanics to be able to use it on. Like it's such a great tank to be able to bring. But from what I've seen personally in the raid tests from prop pallies, especially single target, like the damage is just not there, like at all.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've seen too. And it's a class we know comes online when it has more haste, so you just give it more haste early. It's pretty simple to me. And another thing I would change too is Seal of Truth damage. So Seal of Truth does 80% less damage for prop allies, and it makes it just like pretty garbage. Like it should be the single target, seal, and it's just kind of bad. So I would really like to see Seal of Truth damage get increased. I don't think it necessarily needs to get the full, prot reduction removed from it, but enough that you're like, okay, I'm going to press this. It's going to make me do a lot more single target damage than if I'm running, obviously Seal of Insight, which would just heal you. But Seal of the Righteous, the one that does AoE damage, it should do, significantly more single target damage than the AoE seal. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. So that would also obviously help for one of its big problems, single target damage. So I think that'd be a big change. And the final change I would like to see is put Prop Valley's best stat on their tier gear. It's actually kind of insane because Prop Valley, I believe, has two tier pieces the entire expansion that have haste on it. This is like such an insanely important stat for this class, and their tier gear just doesn't give it to them. So I would like to see, at a minimum, 3 out of 5 tier pieces having haste on it. I mean, ideally 4 out of 5 at least, but like, come on, we can't go like 2 phases where, your best stat isn't even on your tier gear.
That's
So,
really interesting.
yeah.
I think that's really interesting because Blizzard are looking at when they're making changes, they're looking at it from a spell and ability perspective. But yeah, I mean, itemization plays a big part as well, don't it?
Yeah, because it just feels kind of bad because you have, some kind of nice set bonuses, and it would be great if, you could get those without losing a ton of haste to get there. And yeah, I mean, it just feels awful. Your best stat, by far your best stat, just isn't on the gear. So I'd love to see that change too.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, again, when you're talking about that being able to get the haste and seal of truth, I mean, that's where they could kind of tie the haste in, couldn't they? If you got 50% more, and I'm just spitballing a number here, but if you got 50% more haste from the haste that you've got while you've got Seal of Truth on, or something like that, so it kind of was more impactful for single target. Maybe you wouldn't use that for AoE, so you wouldn't have the haste on trash. Like I don't know. I would have to look into it, to actually understand the intricacies between single target and trash, and whether just giving them flat haste would make them overpowered in certain situations. Whereas if it was kind of tied to a seal, then you're limiting that sort of potential overpoweredness, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, potentially, but then honestly, it just like really forces you into that one seal. I kind of like that you get to, if they did buff Seal of Truth, you had a very clear like single target AOE and self sustain seal options, and it would just be really tough. I feel like to ever change out of it if you were losing all that haste. But
Oh, so even on AoE, yeah. Again, this is what from an AoE perspective from Prop Pally, the damage has seemed fine. Like I'm not
mhm.
saying it's amazing,
Yeah.
but it seems fine. So I'm just thinking early on, if they just had the flat haste and they had it all the time, is that going
Mhm.
to make them now like God mode on AoE? So I was
Mhm.
just trying to think of a way where it would more make
Sure.
them better on single target fights.
Yeah, it definitely would obviously boost their AoE damage quite a bit. I attach to like this passive, I would be totally fine if there's like, -5% all damage done or something on
Mhm.
top of like the haste. Whatever they gotta do to like tune it, but Prop I just like does not play well until it has haste. So it just feels bad. You just need the class unlocked, with haste. And if we have to take like a small like overall damage or all damage debuff kind of thing to get that haste, I would take that every day of the week. Like have the appropriate amount of haste, but just get a small debuff or something.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's fair. Cool. Yeah, it is something that I hope to see addressed in general protection Paladin, because I'm a big fan of everything they've done with Paladin so far for both Ret and Holy. I just feel like Prot is like that one spec for Paladin that really does need some attention, preferably before the raids open again the weekend. It is something that I'd like to see. Tomorrow night is normally when we get the changes go out, even though they've been a bit more sporadic recently. It was Thursdays quite religiously. So I would like to see, Prot Pally get some love. Because again, from a 10-man perspective, I would love to run a Protection Paladin in 10 mans purely because of all the utility they bring. So, selfish, I know, but what tanks have we got left? Or have we done them all? No. No, we've done them all, haven't we? Yeah.
Yeah, all four of them. I think we did them all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Is there an? Oh, okay. Yeah, I forgot. Druids can still tank. Okay.
Yeah, it's the cat.
Um.
It's the cat druids that go into bear
Yeah.
form or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. This is honestly my least played one. I've barely touched Guardian Druid. I've been, significantly focusing on the
I
other
like
four.
the pun there. The barely. That was good.
Unintentional, but yeah, brilliant, brilliant. But the changes, I mean, they got a 5% all damage increase. You'll take that at any day. Um, uh, the chance to activate Dream of Cenarius off Mangle crit been raised to 50%, was 40%. I haven't played a ton of Druid, but from what I've heard, this doesn't actually matter too much. Like, you were getting enough procs as is, but fine, sure, get more. Cooldown on Heart of the Wild been lowered for Guardian Druids to 3 minutes, was 6. I honestly don't know how impactful that one is. I just haven't played enough with Guardian Druid.
Well, I kind of like that change. I like that change because, I mean, assuming I'm going along the right lines, I feel like that was kind of their answer to the Druid getting some of that off tank niche back. Which
Yeah.
they've really lost because this is now. If you was to say it was a 4-minute fight, out of a 4-minute fight, you can now spend a minute and a half of that of doing DPS. So that's pretty significant, really. I like the change if that was what they was thinking. If that was their reasoning behind it. So now, again, I mentioned recently, and I'm not sure how accurate it is because I'm the same as you. Like, I actively avoid tanking on as a bear. I love Druid. I love Feral, as in cat. Yeah, Feral cat. I love Resto. I just hate tanking as a Druid because I find it extremely boring. But the niche that they had in Kata was why Druids are popular in Kata. Because when they don't need to tank, they can still do very respectable damage, even in whatever their tanking gear is. They've lost that. It makes that Druid spot very, very hard to justify. But with this, potentially it makes it a bit easier to justify because, again, using like old school methods, which I personally used to do myself back in original Mr. Pandaria, is going into caster form. So you would macro Heart of the Wild with a caster weapon that's got Jade Spirit on, and you would just then pump Wraths and Moonfire because it done more damage than going cat form. So, like, if that's kind of the route they're going down and they're thinking, well, they get a bit of that hybrid utility back, then great. But if you can't make the full use of the 45 seconds as well, this was the thing I was thinking about. Like, I would kind of rather see it as maybe a minute and a half cooldown for Guardians, but it only lasts 20 seconds or something. Someone else can math that out. I'm just making up numbers. But so on those tank swaps, you can use it to do some damage. You're still not going to do the amount of damage an actual DPS would do, but you're doing something. Whereas I think, unless you're getting to use, I can't think of many fights where it's 45 seconds between tank swaps. Like, not especially at the start.
Yeah. And I mean, on every fight too, you're just taunting for vengeance constantly as well. So I haven't looked into the numbers, but it would obviously have to, be enough damage that a bear with, let's say, like 80k vengeance would be less damage than Heart of the Wild. I'm not sure where that ends up, but it would be really cool if they kind of got that niche back, because that's always been their thing is, they can tank on the fly, they can weave into being a pretty high damage off tank. And that's been kind of the most unfortunate thing probably for Druids and MoP is just losing that identity. And I mean, just part of the class fantasy of, shape-shifting into different stuff as a Druid is, kind of cool. And a bit of that got lost in MoP. So something like this, I think, could be a good opportunity to bring that back.
Yeah, because it's like, again, I'm fixating it purely on damage, but if we was to think in a 10-man, your Guardian Druid is your off-tank, and one of your healers die and the boss is on like 20%, that Guardian Druid literally can use Heart of the Wild and then heal that last, 45 seconds of the fight. So it really, if they could get that talent right, it would actually it'd be interesting actually what you could do, because you could potentially go down to one heal in some fights pretty quickly, where there's only those short periods of time where there's lots of damage coming in, where it's like, yeah, that's all right, we'll get the off tank to heal that part. It would actually make for quite interesting gameplay.
Yeah, I would love to see them kind of flesh out that route a little bit more and like really turn that into, a new identity for them. Because they've just kind of they're just sort of a watered down tank that's like not got anything super interesting going for it. So it needs something, and this feels like a very druidy way to do it. Let's see, we still have the Bear Hug one. So when Bear Hug casts on an enemy, they're permanently immune to stuns. Bear Hug instead lowers their damage dealt by 10% for 5 seconds. It's like a 1 minute cooldown. So I mean, it's not bad. It's not like insane, but little short damage reduction cooldown you can use. Never gonna say no to that as a tank. So it's just a nice little icing on the cake kind of deal. Also, like we mentioned with Prot Warrior, the whole parry and dodge giving rage thing. This is a thing for Feral or Guardian Druids as well. When they dodge, they are getting 1 rage that they shouldn't be getting right now. So I haven't played Guardian enough to really say like exactly what this change should be, but they probably should get some kind of rage compensation when this bug gets fixed. Because just playing a class that uses a resource but doesn't really generate much of that resource, it just feels bad. Mm-hmm. So I would say. If this change causes rage issues, for sure, add something for them.
They also got their Maul rage cost reduced as well very early on, didn't they? As well, I know that change was weeks ago, but
I mean, reduced rage costs, that definitely helps as well. Just making abilities a little bit more usable. So
it's quite sad, and again, I have. When I say I've got no interest in Druid, I will always love playing a Druid. Like, I've been a Druid for a long, long time. It's just when Monk is available, every class just drops down in the list of of classes I want to play. And when you look at how, and I don't want any Guardian Druids that are watching this to get too mad at me, but because in my opinion, it's just fact. When you look at how boring the Guardian is compared to every other tank, it's quite a sad state of affairs. And I mean, even just something as basic as their mastery, getting mastery gives you armor. I mean, come on. Like, how boring is that? That's not even like anything interesting, is it? Like, just getting armor. You get armor on every piece of gear. Like, and then, my mastery gives me some more armor. Like, it's just not. There's nothing exciting about the Druid or anything exciting around the playstyle. As I say, that's why I kind of got excited when I saw what they're doing with Heart of the Wild, and my imagination might have gone a little bit overboard, with how I'd like to see it end, with what they may be trying to do. But it does at least then give reason to take a Druid, whereas at the moment I don't know why you would take a Guardian. There's only really 1 or 2 fights, to be fair, where I can even think of a reasonably good use for Stampeding Raw. It's not like, we haven't got a Resto Druid, we haven't got a Boomy, a Feral, whatever, we have to take that Guardian Druid because we need Stampeding Raw. Like, it's not as if anything in their toolkit either really brings anything amazing. And again, people might be thinking, what about Symbiosis? But really, Symbiosis is still more about what the Druid gets than what the other person gets. So, on a fight like Will of the Emperor, where you need to be able to soak sparks, for example, the Druid will be able to use Symbiosis on a Paladin, let's say, to be able to get Divine Shield. So now they can soak a spark. But then you could just not have the Druid and not have Symbiosis and take a Paladin. Do you know what I mean? It's like, There's answers to anything around symbiosis, and so even that, as nice as it is, I just don't see any. They're not desirable, and that's been my favorite word recently. Blizzard are not just trying to make classes viable; they're trying to make them desirable as well. And there's nothing desirable about a Guardian Druid for me.
Yeah, same. I'm obviously a big tank player, and it's a tank. Like I don't even know when I'm gonna level a Guardian Druid, because I just don't have that like real interest in it. There's nothing about it that just is super unique and like makes it interesting. So
what would it take for you to be excited about a Guardian Druid? Like in all seriousness, what would it take for you to be like, oh, maybe Guardians, it may not replace Warrior, because that would take a lot for the sounds of it with how much you love Warrior now. But what would it take to maybe be your second tank?
I mean, to be second tank, I don't think it's even possible for it to get there.
It'd need a full class redesign.
To at least make it like something I might be like excited to play. Like I do actually like playing Feral, like the way it currently is, where you're weaving into bear when you need to, you're weaving into cat when you don't need to be bear. I really like that play style of Druid. So really, just anything that brings it back to that style. It just the current version just feels very bland to me. So just bringing back that identity it's had, for. I guess Wrath and Kata mainly, since they actually did maintain quite a bit in TBC. Yeah, just anything that brings back, going into Cat would make me a lot more interested for sure.
Yeah, so I got asked a similar question. I can't even remember where now. Maybe it was on Countdown to Classic. I said, like, one thing. I said exactly the same thing as you, just to be perfectly clear. Yeah, I like that play style. I love the fact that I can try and minimize the amount of time I spend tanking by relying more on, let's say, you to pick up do the heavy lifting. I'll taunt when you need me to taunt. That's cool. But the rest of the time, I am trying to do as much damage as physically possible. Like I like that. So even if they tweaked the toolkit a little bit, so not to make it so Guardian and Feral are too similar, but just a couple of the cat abilities. So Savage Roar being a prime example. Putting Savage Roar into Guardian. So when you go in cat form, you can at least get the benefit of Savage Roar. Like you're never going to be able to get and then you would need finishers. Obviously, you'd need Rip, Rip and Ferocious Bite. But you're not going to have Tiger's Fury, so you've not got that on-demand energy. You're not going to be, benefit, or potentially you could still even then benefit from Dream of Cenarius. So just making it so it's a really weak version of Feral to the point where you would never ever be in Guardian spec to do damage. It's always going to do significantly lower. But if it done 70% of what you would do in Feral, so I kind of feel like that would be a happy medium for me. So it's still a nerfed version, but it's just doing enough damage that as an off tank, it's potentially one of the higher DPS off tanks.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that's sort of how it's been most of the time, because there's been like cat talents and bear talents and like hybrid talents. So you've always like taken a hit by being like that off tank and not being pure cat, but even if it was a little bit more of a hit than it is like right now in Kata, for example, like I'd be totally fine with that. It would just feel way better if it was, more viable, to be cat, because like that's their niche. Like that when people play Feral Druid, now Guardian, that's what they're expecting. They like the weave in and out. And as a player that, does lots of like solo tank stuff over the years, I always loved my Feral Druids, because they were able to do those, 1 second taunts on Algalon to like take the phase punch, that kind of stuff. Just having those guys that wanted to just do as much damage as they could, and they were gonna, weave into bear, do that 1 second taunt, weave back into cat. I love those guys. Those were like the unsung heroes of those like solo tank you know fights where you didn't need a whole extra like tank spec person. You just had a good feral druid that could swap on the fly, and like I would love to see that version of it come back a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's something that they could do around Heart of the Wild. If you're a guardian and you take Heart of the Wild, it outside of it use it like having a cooldown just for having Heart of the Wild. If you're guardian, it gives you a couple of cat abilities. So it actually it forces you to be like have that one talent. So you can't then benefit from Dreamer Cenarius. You can't, you would have to use that. Like, I'd like to see him do something. But we've spoke about the one tank that we didn't want to talk about. We just spoke about for probably longer than the other ones.
Yeah, it's crazy how that happens. But yeah, Heart of the Wild for sure. That's it. Like, just give it a passive that gives you a few of your cat abilities back, and then it just becomes that choice of like, am I like that hybrid off tank / DPS, or am I that just pure tank bear by going Dream Scenarios? I think that's open and shut. That's probably the best way to do it.
Yep. Well, hopefully we do see something like that. Again, it does need something that drastic. I honestly think. Otherwise, yeah, it's going to be a frowned upon tank for most people. Cool. So that's all the tanks. We spoke about any. Do you briefly want to touch on any tanks that need more? I feel like we've kind of covered that at the same time as we've gone along.
I think I'm all good. I think we covered it pretty well as we went through.
All right, so next, what we're going to talk about is 3 separate categories. So there's only 4 tanks that exist, apparently. So we're just going to probably focus on those. And we're going to talk about the meta, or what we think would be the meta, with a bit of justification why. And I'm sure there will be some interchangeable spots there, which we'll get into as well. But that's for both 10 and 25 man. And then we're going to talk about what tanks are really fun to play in, again, our opinion, and we'll rank those in order. And then finally, the easiest specs to play. So like I said at the start, if you're someone that's just come back and you really want an easy tank to play where you can spend more time focusing on boss mechanics than, min-maxing your class to the absolute, the brink, then this could be the section that you want to see. So, let's start with the meta let's start with 25 man, because you've been focusing more. You always focus more on 25 man anyway. So, what do we think are going to be the best tanks in order, preferably?
Sure. So, basically for 25 man, I see Bloody K plus Protware as the top tank combo. They are both riposte tanks, so they do take each other's gear, but that only really matters for like day one kind of stuff, and potentially gearing up for this staggered raid release. But they are also the only 2 people in the raid that are going to want that parry dodge gear. So, I mean, only competing with one other person is not too big of a deal, I don't think. And the fact that both of those tanks bring a really good DPS off spec is also helpful. Arms Warrior is great. Unholy DK is great, and potentially Frost DK is great too now. So the big thing with Protware is it just brings a ton of stuff that I feel has more value on 25 man, like Skull Banner, for example. But you also, you bring that Vigilance, you bring the Demo Banner, and Protware is just, we were talking earlier, like kind of unkillable in those like very high vengeance situations where you could be getting up to 1.6 and now maybe even closer to 2 mil shield barriers. So I'm a big fan of that combo, the Bloody K Protware, and then all the gear they're taking is just gear that only those 2 classes want. All your DPS are happy; they don't have to compete with the tanks for any gear. I would say Brew instead of the Protware, totally fine too. But I would even say like the Protware can take the Blood DK spot. I don't think you have to have a Blood DK. I think it's totally fine not to. But if you're talking about like probably the most common comp people are going to run with success, I would say it's probably Blood DK Protware. But yeah, Bloody K Prot Warrior, Prot Warrior Brewmaster, Bloody K Brewmaster, I think all great. Uh, you could even throw Prot Pally in there. I think Prot Pally is fine. Obviously, it would be a lot better if it got, some of the changes I had talked about earlier. But for people who are not, super min-maxing, I think it's fine to throw it in there as long as you have probably a Bloody K or Prot Warrior main tank to combo it with. And
what do we think? Like the sort of, or what have you seen yourself in terms of, damage, the difference in output on single target between, Blood DK, Blood DK to Guardian Druid, like everything in between. Are we talking like humongous amounts of difference, or?
So off the top of my head, probably. I mean, at most, I'd say Bloody K probably like 25% ahead. But that was before all these changes too, and some of the classes got buffed. Bloody K got nerfed a little bit, so I mean, this is all much narrower than it was before. So I honestly, it's probably down to maybe like a 10% difference on a single target damage, something like that. And the AoE damage, I think, is pretty similar. I've seen like Bloody K do crazy AoE damage, Prot Warrior do crazy AoE damage, Brewmaster do crazy AoE damage, Prot Pally do good AoE damage. Guardian, I haven't really seen much. I've seen like one raid with a Guardian Druid, so I don't have like a lot of data to go off for that one. But AoE, all the tanks I've seen seem to be doing great on that front. It really just comes down to what I think is probably only like a 10% DPS difference at this point, with Bloody K being the top one there, Prot Warrior being the number 2, Brewmaster number 3. I'm not totally sure where Guardian fits in, honestly. And then Prot Pally would be the last of the other 3.
Yeah, which pretty much is what I've seen as well, to be honest with you. I feel like, yeah, it just is the damage. But if we're only talking 10%, it's not massive amounts, is it, where people should be like, oh, I'm not going to play Prot Pally because it's going to do like negative damage. It's like, it's still going to do damage, but yeah, ultimately, I think in 25 man, it's probably less important, I would say, than 10 man. I feel like in 25 man, you've kind of got so many cooldowns, and the utility that you might want from specific tanks, you're gonna get from other sources anyway.
Yeah. So Prot Pally though, it might be a little bit lower than that. It might be like a 15%, maybe even a 20% difference from Bloody K. But the thing with Prot Pally that's kind of annoying is for single target like parsing, a lot of it just comes down to Avenger Shield procs. So it's very random, like how much damage you're actually going to do. So like Prot Pally could do really well. You get super lucky on your dodges and parries, Avenger Shield resets. You could do no damage because you get no resets. So that is one of the frustrating parts about Prot Pally single target damage, just how reliant it is on those procs. But yeah, for 25 man, I would say like probably Prot Warrior or Bloody K plus anything is going to be fine for the majority of players. But probably Bloody K Prot Warrior is going to be the optimal choice. Not that most people need to follow that.
So just out of interest, I don't know if you knew anyone who's done the numbers or anything like that, but what is the reason for the Blood DK? So if you think about in a 25 man, having a banner, one banner, scales so much better because it's 25 people that are benefiting from it over like 10 in a 10 man where it's obviously less impactful. Would there not be a world where you just ran 2 Prot Warriors because if the damage was close between Blood DK and Prot Warrior anyway, you're now getting the extra banner, an extra vigilance, an extra rallying cry, all of the good stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that's honestly totally fine too. Personally, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that, but I think two Prowler is absolutely fine. I mean, for the reasons you mentioned, and Prowler just kind of holds its own, survivability, single target damage, AoE damage. Across the board, it's a very, very good tank. I think it's something a decent amount of people are kind of sleeping on, too, because I've seen a ton of people running like Brewmaster over Prowler, and I don't know if it's just because they haven't tried it or like they just really love Brewmaster or whatever, but I think a lot of people are sleeping on Prowler, and I mean, I think it's good enough that you could just actually run two of them.
Yeah, because again, with as someone who I love Monk, but Brewmaster don't bring anything. Like ultimately, when you really like start breaking it down, I know the shield from
Ox
is
statue.
nice.
That's
yeah,
pretty much it. Yeah,
but it don't do anything particularly good.
Oh god, what is it? Avert
Avert
harm.
harm. It's 10 yards. Like it's so pathetic the range on it, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, for things like dogs, where everybody's gonna be stacked up on the same point anyway, like good for stuff like that. But yeah, it's yeah.
Compared to the warrior, if you compare, like, I bring Avert harm, give me a raid spot, and then you compare it to a warrior, like,
yeah. No, I think warrior's absolutely awesome. But yeah, I mean, Blood DK, like the big things it has going for it, obviously, it's highest single target damage. It has cheat death, which for that's always like a very nice little fallback to have. Is when you die, you don't actually die. Like as a tank, that's just kind of a very overpowered thing to have. It makes it very forgiving. You make mistakes and you don't get punished for them. So I think just probably the single target damage and the ease of playing a Blood DK is actually super, super powerful for the majority of people.
Yeah. Okay. What about 10 man then? So just to recap, 25. We're saying Blood DK and Warrior, or Warrior and Brewmaster, or DK and Brewmaster, and then kind of Paladin, Druid need a little bit more love, but you'd be fine on either of them ultimately.
Yeah. I should mention too on the Blood DK, one of the big things they do bring is their self-sustain. So a lot of Prowler's self-sustain just comes from shield bearer getting big absorbs. It gets really crazy when you have more vengeance, but at lower vengeance, when you have low rage generation and stuff like that, because you don't have enough things attacking you, it is a little harder to sustain there for sure. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing Blood DK is bringing over some of the other tanks is that self-sustain on top of cheat death.
Yeah. Okay. 10 man?
Yeah, but for 10 man, I would say probably Blood DK plus Brew. I do like Brew a little bit more in 10 man just because I feel like the Ox statue is more impactful there. It's easier, I think, for it to be a huge difference maker. Like if you can go from 2 heals to 1 heal, for example, or 3 to 2, whatever, you're gaining an absurd amount of extra damage, in a 10 mana environment. So if it is like that tipping point that actually gets you there, I think that's very, very powerful. And the combination of like Blood DK plus Brewmaster, where you have the Bloodworms healing everybody, and then you have the Brewmaster shielding everybody, that's really strong because those synergize very well. The Bloodworms top people up. The Brewmaster, gives them extra health essentially to make big AoE mechanics, not kill them or, whatever. Just it just helps with the general sustainability of the group. So I'm a pretty big fan of that combo for 10 man. And also like Skull Banner with fewer people just doesn't feel quite as good. So I think Prowler is a little bit weaker in 10 man for that reason. Also, you're going to be getting more vengeance in 25 man, and I feel like Prowler really benefits from higher vengeance. And so I think you can kind of run pretty similar to 25, sort of whatever you want for the majority of players, but I'm guessing Bloody K plus Bruise probably kind of be the meta, but I do feel like you can, throw a Prot Warrior in there, Prot Ally in there, Guardian Druid in there, and you'll be totally fine, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I kind of think it also depends on what else you've got in the group in 10 man. I think that's a lot more important
Yeah.
in 10 than 25. Like in 25, you're going to have a Ret Paladin. You might have a Holy Paladin. Like, there's, and you're going to probably have multiple arms warriors. Like, you kind of know that there's a lot of those things that are just going to be covered without you having to revolve your tanks and healers around them. Whereas in 10 man, it's like, well, if you haven't got a Ret Paladin, you haven't got a Holy Pally, certain fights are made easier by having bops, then you might bring a Prot Paladin. I think the lesser represented tanks in 25 man might actually have a higher representation in 10 man just because it's not as easy to bring all the utility. And it's probably easier to say, well, we want a full range group where we're running, 3 hunters, a couple of warlocks, whatever, a shadow priest, but we still want the paladin stuff, so we'll get that from the tank. I think like it does open more of that up. But I do think Prot Warrior is extremely. I mean, you've just been saying how amazing Prot Warrior is in 25, but I think for that similar reason, I think Prot Warrior is actually really valuable in 10 man. Just because it brings that huge toolkit. You might not like if you haven't got an arms warrior. I think running a Prot Warrior is kind of what I would personally want to do. Whereas if I had an arms warrior, then I would probably just then revert to the default Blood DK Brewmaster. I think it really depends what's there for me to want to rate the tanks.
Yeah, for sure. Like what your comp is gonna for definitely dictate kind of how good each tank is for your specific group. You want to bring every buff, every debuff, that stuff for sure. And maybe your group's lacking on some defensive CDs, like group defensives, things like that. Like Prot Pally, I think has a lot of value in 10 man too, just because like you could have 2 hand of sacks, you could have 2 bops, in an environment where you don't necessarily have like a lot of those extra, external cooldowns for tanks. Being able to bring 2 30% DRs on one player, that's insane. And like, I mean, Prot Pally also has Lay on Hands. They can even use that on the other tank. Sacred Shield, they can throw that on the other tank. They can throw Word of Glory heals on the other tank. Like, I think Prot Pally's got a lot of use for sure in 10 man specifically. I think it's good enough in 25 that you aren't like severely gimping your raid to bring one. But 10 man, I think it brings just the sheer amount of utility it brings, I think makes it pretty valuable.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like I honestly, I'd put Prot Pally right up there at the top. Not literally number one. I'd still probably have to say Blood DK just for all the reasons that we've said already. But I would probably put Prot Pally certainly above. I'd probably put it above everything else. But again, very comp dependent. But like you say, the amount of stuff that you get just from that one spot is it's pretty insane. So it'd be nice to see Paladin in phase 1 shine in one raid size at least anyway. So hopefully it is the case and it is in 10 man.
And it is a support tank at this point too. So you do really want like a better tank that it can throw buffs onto. If it does get some of these buffs we had talked about earlier, though, then it absolutely could move into that, being a actual top choice for the main tank part of it too.
Yeah, I mean, there's one tank that we've not really mentioned a great deal in these 2 comps. So, what do you think about running double Guardian Druid for 10 man?
I think at that point you probably just delete your account and you don't think about playing WoW anymore.
Yeah, move along. Someone's going to do it, and they'll watch this video, and there's going to be a guild that goes and I don't know, speed runs MSV in the fastest time with 2 Guardian Druids just to say, oh, look how good they are. So most fun tanks to play, and this is very subjective because, I mean, what I would say Brewmaster, 100%. Like if I was to pick the most fun tank, and that's purely because I like Brewmaster, you'd pick yeah, Prop Warrior. But if you was to try and rank them in order of fun, where they're just a bit, interesting.
I mean, for me, Prop Warrior and Brewmaster would be kind of tied. Brewmaster might get the slight edge if they got those like Gift of the Ox changes, because man, the private server version of Brewmaster is so fun compared to this beta one we have. But yeah, Brewmaster and Prop Warrior are probably like neck and neck for me. They are just so insanely fun to play. They're very, very cool tanks. I mean, Prop Warrior suffered for so long. It's good to see it finally getting some love. And then I would go Prop Alley after that. I mean, a lot of people know me from, Prop Alley and TBC, Prop Alley and Wrath. I'm a huge Prop Alley enjoyer. I love the kit. I love, being able to kind of watch the raid frames and actually have an impact on what's happening. Watch for that like good lay on the hands on somebody. Throw a sack on somebody at the right time. All that kind of stuff. And I mean, the kit is insane, and then being able to have this insane haste scaling too. Using your abilities way more often is just more fun, right? You want to be able to press things a lot, and the haste change lets you do that. So the holy power implementation on Kata felt really bad. Like Judgment didn't even give you holy power until you got the Dragon Soul set, and you just didn't generate a ton of holy power. You only had 3 max. Now you have 5 max. You generate more holy power. You have a reduced, global cooldown from the haste, and you have reduced cooldown on all your abilities. You just get to press way more stuff, and that's just fun. So huge Prop I fan. Blood DK, that'd be my next one. It is fun for sure. They got a lot of cool buffs. If I didn't just spend a year playing 3 Blood DKs, I might rank it higher, but I've just got a Blood DK out right now. So it's number 4 for me. It was already in a great place coming into MoP, and they just, buff it a little bit more on top of that. So Blood DK is in a great spot. It is definitely fun to play. It's nice to have that cheat death ability again. If you were, a Prop Alley Wrath player with Ardent Defender, you know how just absolutely broken that is on a tank. The things it lets you get away with. So, yeah, Bloody K. And then, man, I think my next one's probably Warlock with, like, the glyph that lets them, like, tank. And then, oh, man, maybe Rogue with, like, Evasion up is probably my next favorite. And then, I don't know, way under that, I'd put Guardian Druid there, probably.
Oh man, that was good. I like it. I'm surprised DK's that low, but then after you said, you've just spent a whole expansion playing 3 of them, like I get it. You can play too much of one class no matter how much you enjoy it. My list is not that different to yours, except for I'm gonna probably annoy DKs as well as Druids today, because I would say number 1 for me in terms of fun has to be Brewmaster, like just no doubt, and that's just because I'm such a monk enjoyer. I don't care what monk spec I'm playing as long as I'm playing monk. Second, it's actually quite a tough one because it would be Prop Pally. I would put Prop Pally second, but I would put Prop Pally second later on in the expansion. I think Warrior is actually more fun to tank on, if we're talking early on, whereas if Prop Pally does get some of them changes, then that will make it fun enough for me personally to then put it second above Warriors. So it's like interchangeable kind of 2 and 3 between Prop Pally and Prop Warrior. And then unfortunately, I'm not gonna troll and say all the Warlocks and the Rogues. I would put Guardian Druid next. And that's purely because if I was to spend time on a class between a Druid and a DK, it would be a Druid. Like as much as I don't actually like Guardian Druid, I don't like tanking in bear form. That tells you how much I like Blood DK. The fact that I would put Guardian above Blood
Yeah,
DK.
that's wild. That's wild.
Yeah, I've just never been a Blood DK fan. The only DK spec that I've ever enjoyed is Frost. I've done quite a few resets. You know, I'm not going to say particularly long, but realistically, maybe 3 or 4 resets as Unholy in phase one, and kind of got bored of it quite quickly. Not really a play style for me. Um, but yeah, and Blood DK is just another one of them. Blood DK, Unholy. I don't like either of them. But I don't mind Frost. So in terms of fun, again, fun is going to be a very personal opinion. You know, Rian is probably pulling his hair out like, you know, Blood DK is the most fun tank ever. So it's different people. Different people enjoy different things, and yeah, for me, Blood DK would be the bottom. But again, to be fair, between like Brewmaster is a very clear number one, and Blood DK is a very clear last place. And then the other three, I'd kind of play any of them. It is just, yeah, Prop Pally, once it gets those levels of haste, like that hits different. Like, again, I'm the same as you. I love having a toolkit where you can be impactful to the raid, where people notice them things. You know, that's the difference between a good prop pally and a bad prop pally, or even the difference between a good rep pally and a bad rep pally is the person that is keeping an eye on their raid frames and making sure that they're putting, you know, saving people with hand of protection, getting that clutch lay on hands out, you know, using hand of sacrifices on the tanks, especially if they've not already been pre-assigned and it's like, well, they're just sitting there not being used, you know, using your own knowledge of the fight to know that the tank's about to start taking some big damage and be ready for that. So like that's why I really like Prop Pally, and it's why I just like Paladin in general, because it's not really got to be all about the rotation and how fun the individual spec is. It's more just about the overall toolkit for me for a Paladin. So yeah, I think that would have to be number two, even with lower levels of haste, just based on that.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty solid list. I mean, for me, like the Brew and Prower for sure are the top, but like the Prop and Bloody Kid, they aren't like that far behind them for me. Like I think they're both super fun. Also, I just Brew and Prower to me are just on, you know, different level of fun. But this is just such a good tank expansion. Like as long as you're not picking a Guardian Druid, like you can't really go wrong, you know. I should say we have been memeing a lot on Guardian Druid. It does get very competitive later on for sure. It's if you're a huge Guardian player, it will be good later. I think even in phase one it could start being pretty solid, but yeah,
but by
later in the
BFA Classic, they're going to be amazing. Good. Oh, in this expansion, right? Yeah, once they get massive amounts of crit, like that's the whole thing with Guardian Druid. But even then, I don't I'm not buying into it. Like, and yes, we're going on private servers, like, and even historically, like Guardian Druids, yeah, cool. But when they got big amounts of crit, they came online, so to speak. But I still don't see it personally. I still think your Brewmasters, Prop Paladins in particular, I still think they're definitely, in my opinion, I hope I'm proved wrong because I like it when I'm wrong. At least I learn something. I think Prop Pally will end the expansion as just the king. Like, I don't think anyone's going to be getting near them once they start to get good gear, which is a good, you know, that's a good, hopefully a good thing to hear for Paladins that, you know, are a little bit deflated at the moment at how they're going to be in phase one. That I think like the back end of the expansion is going to be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the P server logs I looked at, it looked like Bloody K was still like overall kind of the most represented in like the top logs, but you know, we have some changes now. We have more changes coming. You know, we'll see what happens, but I think by the end of the expansion, it'll be very, very competitive between all the tanks, regardless.
Yeah, and ultimately, it's like you said, it's a great expansion for tanking in general. It don't matter what tank you like, even if it is Guardian Druid, like you'll be fine because well, as a Guardian Druid, you'll get lots of free time to do the gardening, to go shopping, spend time with your family because you won't get invited to raids, so you'll have time to do lots of stuff. So it'll be a great time for you.
Yeah, just infinite free time. So a lot of people sleep on that. They're trying to maximize their time playing WoW, but sometimes you just need that free time. Get some errands done, and Guardian Druid's the spec for you if you need to get some errands done.
Exactly. I mean, we can throw all this in now because it's nearly 2 hours into recording. So by the time I edit it down, it's going to be probably an hour and a half. No one's watching. um,
Especially not the Guardian Druids. They're long gone.
no, yeah, they've already gone. All right, the last one. So easiest tanks to play in order. So we'll go from easiest to most difficult, and again, very opinionated. But so I think maybe if we try and go along the lines of what are you going to get the best results from without having to particularly, be a master at the class? Maybe that's a better way to word it.
I mean, Guardian Druid pretty simplistic. It lost a lot of the skill expression that you had from like Feral Druid with all the cat weaving stuff, all the abilities you lost there. So
The Guardian hate's just not stopping it. So what you're saying is it's the worst class to play, and it requires no skill. Like if you play Guardian, you have got no skill.
Yeah, we're just gonna keep the Guardian hate train rolling. I'd say it's probably the easiest to play. Like historically in WoW, from this point on, I think was pretty much always considered, the easy tank to play. So yeah, I put Guardian there. Blood Decay, number two. I feel like the skill floor is like very high on it. Like just doing very basic bare bones stuff, you're gonna perform very, very well on the Blood Decay. That said, there are like a lot of min max things you can do to really like fully unlock the class, but I think you get a lot of your value like early on from doing not too much stuff. So I put Blood Decay on there. Prot Warrior, I would put next. Just kind of learning how to manage your rage well is a really big part of it. Like you have shield barrier to give you a big absorb. You have shield block to give you, guaranteed blocks. You have heroic strike for single target damage. You have cleave for AoE damage. You have execute for huge single target damage. So just kind of like learning the situations when each one of those is, the right play, is pretty important. And then you have, a bunch of different utility things you can do. You got your demo banner for reducing damage for all the mobs around you. You've got Skull Banner to increase your raid's DPS. You got Rallying Cry to give everybody a little bit more health. You got, Intervene. You can intervene stuff. You'll frequently use Intervene just on your other tank just to get Vengeance. You don't even have to do a taunt swap. You can just do that. Although a lot of times you will want to do a taunt swap anyway, just to hopefully proc your riposte to get more crit. And then, Vigilance, having that for your other tank is huge. So, on top of just doing like your own stuff, you have a lot of impactful things you can do for your raid. So, I put Prot Warrior up there, and especially on a fight like Emperor's Check Zero, where you're taking, I talked earlier about like taking 1.5 million damage in 0.5 seconds. So, a fight like that, you're just like essentially playing on the edge of a knife. Like you're at any moment, everything could just be over. Like you can be full health, you can have a massive absorb on you, and you could just instantly die. So just kind of like learning how to manage your shield barrier in that situation, and like looking at it like, oh, I got full health of 400k shield barrier, knowing that in that moment you're actually in a lot of danger, and you probably need to refresh it and put like a 1 million plus shield barrier up, like things like that. So I feel Bratwurst is very rewarding, but there's times you'll just get clapped because like you didn't press the right button. Like in the same situation, a blood DK would just proc purgatory. You're just gonna die. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's one of the big things is you are the one fully in control of your survival. There's no parachute to save you like the blood DK. After that, I would put brew. Managing like your energy, your chi, your shuffle up time, your elusive brew, your stagger, knowing like when to clear that, when to not clear that, making sure your ox statue's down and in range and everything. Finding good times to use avert harm, all that kind of stuff. Finding times to use transcendence, really really fun spell. Just stuff like that. Brewmaster, I feel like there's a lot of. I feel like the floor is pretty damn low for it because, like, somebody who's just not keeping shuffle up is going to get clapped. If they're not, purifying off their stagger when they should be, like, they're going to get clapped. Like, Brewmaster, the floor, I feel like, is very, very low on Brewmaster. Like, if you aren't pressing the right buttons, you're just going to die. Like elusive brew as well. Like if you're missing that 30% dodge or 35% if you have the set bonus in the first phase, that's pretty significant. Like, a third of attacks are missing you because you press that button. So yeah, I feel like brew has so much going on that you actually need to be controlling. That I would put it there. I debated whether or not I'd put Prop Pally or Brew like there. I feel like Prop Pally maybe slightly ekes it out for like hardest tank, just because of how many impactful buttons you have that you can use on your raid, and especially on the other tank. And if you're like monitoring those raid frames, you can just be so impactful for your raid. And obviously you're doing, your full rotation at the same time you're like making these raid-wide decisions too. So to me, I think Prop Pally slightly inches out Brew for like hardest tank to like really master. But if we're talking in terms of like, easiest like skill floor and stuff like that, I feel like the floor on Brew is probably lower than Prop Pally, but there's just so much extra stuff you can do on Prop Pally to like really, really min max it.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a boring one from me because I literally agree with that order completely, which I was kind of hoping weren't going to be the case. I actually thought you was going to put Brewmaster as the hardest. But I agree completely. Guardian Druid,
I
very
can,
easy.
yeah, I can go back through and reorder it for you so you can be like, oh, actually,
Yeah, well, that would have been nice because I've got nothing to come back with. No, in all seriousness, like Guardian Druid, yeah, very simple. And quite honestly, yes, you've got some maintenance buffs. You've got some decisions to make between Frenzied Regen or Savage Defense. Overall, as a druid, all of it means very little because again, you're not in the raid, so it just doesn't matter. Blood Death Knight, I do think having that crutch of the extra life, the fact that you're not heavily reliant on, and we're talking at a very basic entry level, of playing the class, you're not really worrying too much about Vengeance. Like, yes, Vengeance is great, but you're not as fixated on, how much you've got. You want as much as possible to do as much damage as possible, but I do feel like, the really good DKs are worrying about that. Someone who's just tanking on a DK, fairly new player, like they're kind of gonna be fine just pressing their buttons. And then Prop Warrior again got a really good toolkit, but like in my opinion, not as difficult of a toolkit as Prop Paladin and Brewmaster in terms of like their impactfulness and like the decision making around it. Normally, it's like someone calls out for a banner, or you've got a weak aura that's a banner rotation, and you just use it when it's your turn. Like some of it's simplified. And then Brewmaster and Prot Paladin. The reason I would say Prot Paladin is actually more difficult is because your active mitigation is like actually harder to keep up. Firstly, like shuffle for a Brewmaster. That's very, very, very easy to keep up. Like like you said, if someone hasn't got shuffle up, they're going to die most likely, which absolutely is true. The hardest part of any fight as a Brewmaster should be the first 2 seconds. Like that's it. The first 2 seconds of the fight should be the most dangerous part of the fight for you. You get all your stuff rolling, made easier by using Chi Brew, obviously, so you can instantly just get the Chi, bang, get shuffle up, and you've got elusive brew up straight away as well. Like, there's ways you make it easy. So I think the whole plate spinning of playing a Brewmaster is actually not, it might sound complicated to begin with, but it's not actually that difficult, but it is something. Whereas with a Guardian Druid or again like a Blood DK, you've not got those things really where if they fall off, you will die. Whereas with a Brewmaster, you have got those, which is the only reason I've put it up there in difficulty wise. It's kind of because if you're not managing those properly, then you die. Right? It's as simple as that because you do get hit really hard. And yeah, whereas Prot Paladin definitely the most difficult, and I would say does become easier over time with haste again, as it kind of just you get more globals, so you can keep your Shield of Righteous buff up a lot easier. You then can start actually looking a lot more at even throwing, taking Eternal Flame, because you are just going to have you're going to be generating holy power so much quicker. You can start throwing Eternal Flames on yourself and on the off tank. Or the main tank, whatever way around, and even the raid. But yeah, ultimately, the difficulty around Prot Paladin comes from you're the difficult part of being the Prot Pally, because you've got to manage your own stuff and pay attention to the mechanics, and have you got a taunt, have you got to move out of something, and then actually having an impact on the raid by looking at the raid frames and using those things that should be used. Like as a Prot Paladin, you should never get to the end of a boss fight and you haven't used Hand of Sacrifice. You haven't bopped someone. Yeah, unless there's literally no use for a bop in a specific fight. But in general, there normally is. There's normally times that you can do something with those abilities. So I think when you've got something that is so impactful to the raid, that is taking your attention away from your own job, that naturally makes it difficult, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just, like, the more things you have to do, the more mental bandwidth it takes, and the more likely you are to make mistakes. So, I mean, baseline, you're doing your own rotation, right? But then when you throw in, like, having to look at raid frames, which probably aren't going to be, in the center of your screen. You, as a prop, you do probably want them more of like a healer setup, where they are a little bit more centered than other tanks. But I mean, between, doing your own rotation perfectly, looking at raid frames, just doing each fight's mechanics correctly, not only doing them correctly yourself, but then thinking ahead of like, oh, can I do something that's going to be helpful to the raid here? Like, pop Devotion Aura before a big AoE comes out, throw a sack on the other tank before he's going to take some bigger damage. If he's got like a debuff that can be bopped off, throw that on him. Things like that. So yeah, just every little thing you add that you have to do, it just makes everything else harder and increases the likelihood of making mistakes. So I think Prop A just has, like, when you are like fully playing it to its maximum effect, I think it just has way more to do than all the other tanks.
Yeah, which is why I really like Prot Pally. I like that more. I like playing any class where you've got things that you can do that can really come in clutch. It's great when you know he would have died if I didn't do that. That it's just it's a nice feeling. Cool.
Like the lay on hands on somebody that's like about to die. I mean, it just feels so good hitting that. You're like, oh, they were about to die. Like, you see them at a sliver of HP, you hit that lay on hands on them, and then they lose that same sliver of HP, and you're like, oh, they would have just died there. I hit that lay on hands. Like, That was it. And I mean, as somebody who played, 3 Blood DKs, that was pretty much all I played this whole expansion Kata. That was something I really missed from Wrath, because like in Wrath, I was constantly like looking for like that kind of stuff to throw on people. Like, keeping my healers alive. Like, healers about to die, you throw lay on hands on them, you keep them up, they keep you up in turn. And like just stuff like that I really missed from playing Blood DK this last year. But I'm so glad I'm gonna be able to do some more of that stuff again.
Yeah, and I love it even from a spectator perspective. So like, there's multiple times in the raid where like I've called out a priest, and gone, oh my god, amazing grip. When a priest actually uses a life grip for purposes that are not trolling, and you literally
I have
see
no
that
clue what
grip.
that's like.
Yeah, I know. You don't see it very often.
I got this guy, Rugs, in my guild. He only uses it to troll. He's always trying to grip me next to ledges to make me fall off. He's never gotten it a single time. Like, I see it coming every single time. He never gets me. It's crazy. But
good old Rugs.
Yeah,
we've got two priests like that. We've got two priests like that, McNulty and Chunk, and they both they try and kill. Well, they do successfully kill people, but obviously now they've had far too much power given to them, because they've got Void Shift as well now. Or whatever it's called. It is Void Shift, isn't it?
Yeah, the trade HP thing, yeah.
Yeah, so they're killing people with that instead now. But, when I do see one of them do a really good grip during a boss where the person they gripped would have just died. For example, I've seen them do it on things like even Spirit Kings, where someone's about to die because they're going to get hit by the arrows from Scottejaye.
Yeah.
And they grip them out.
Like they get hit by rain of arrows, they're pinned down. You grip them away from the what is it called? Volley? Is that the frontal one? Yeah. You grip them out of the volley. Yeah, perfect situation.
And it's just nice to see people looking and using those abilities. So yeah, I just like that sort of gameplay. So that's why I love Paladin. But I think we'll wrap it up there. I said this was going to take an hour, and it's taken 2. So. But I knew it would.
I could talk forever about tanks, and I mean, you could talk forever about MoP. So with our powers combined,
it was never going to be quick. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and hopefully, the guys watching thoroughly enjoyed it as well. So not only where can they find you, but like, what are your plans content-wise on those platforms as well over the next couple of weeks? Because obviously, for anyone that's playing MoP, we've got a big 6 to 8 weeks ahead of us, realistically.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be huge. I mean, even bigger than that, maybe, because we got this staggered raid release and everything. So, yeah, it's going to be nice. But you can find me Subtle FW on Twitch and YouTube. I focus on tank content. I'm going to be maining probably Prowler and like Brew. I'll be playing a lot too. We're going to be doing a lot of splits. So I'll be playing Prowler, Brewmaster, Blood DK Prop Alley. So if you like any of those tanks, you can check me out. I'll be, once MoP hits, I'll be streaming most days. And I'll have some videos coming out. We already did like a big deep dive with Riani and Cow. Going over Blood DKs and Prowlers, nice almost 4-hour chat on that. So
that was brilliant, by the way. I listened to all that, and I went to comment as well. Honestly, it was amazing. I watched it from start to finish, and I was going to drop a comment saying, "Oh, like great job, boys," but I didn't want you to know that I'd watched it. So. But no, honestly,
sneaky.
I was painting. The room behind me, I was painting, and I'd use on in the background while I was painting, and it was really good. So I would heavily recommend for anyone that loves tanks to go and watch that immediately.
Thank you. We're also going to be doing a Prop Alley and Brewmaster one soon. We were going to do it this week, but there were some schedule conflicts. But we'll be getting to that one hopefully pretty soon. We just can't do it, weekends where there's beta testing, like raid testing, because, all 3 of us are pretty swamped with that. So, but we're looking to try to get that done soon. Just, time zone differences and everything is hard to work around. But Yeah, we'll be doing that one soon. Maybe we do Guardian Druid. I don't know. Like at this point, I don't know if it's even going to happen. But if people really want it, we'll do it. But at this point, probably just doing Prop Paladin Brewmaster.
And then Warlock with a glyph.
Yeah, Warlock with the glyph, exactly. Maybe hop on Sod for that, fleshed out Warlock tank experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so yeah, if you want to check me out, Subtle FW, Twitch, and YouTube. I also have a Discord you can join. Got links on my Twitch and YouTube to that as well. Scottejaye, throw them in the description too. But yeah, you can come in there, ask any tank questions you want. I'll respond as soon as I can. And yeah, if you're looking for tank content, there will be plenty of it for the next many months of MoP.
Yes, and it's going to be very exciting times. As I said, like it's going to be, well, yeah, with the staggered raid release. We potentially could feel like we're progressing with phase 1 content for literally a couple of months. I genuinely. It looks like they're going to do Terrace of Endless Springs separate to Heart of Fear, if how that was worded around the Celestial Dungeon loot, is right. I don't know, but yeah, it's gonna be a lot of streaming, a lot of raiding, and yeah, I will put the links to all of your stuff in the description as I always do, and I would really encourage everybody to. Yeah, go and watch Subtle's videos. Go and watch him stream. I lurk quite a lot in his streams. Again, he don't know about it. I'm one of them weirdos. I just like to look. I just like to watch. I don't want to talk.
Well, maybe I can give you the link to that other site.
Oh, that'd be great.
For that,
yeah. No, as always, mate. Thank you. Thank you for spending some time with me to talk about all things tanks. And normally I say I'll see you on the next one, but we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. Always great to talk tanks, talk MoP, and talk to you.
Cool. Cheers, mate.
See you later.